Hello there, gentlemen. This is the Steven Hour, and we are back with a 007 movie review. Today, we'll be reviewing the 1983 film Octopussy. Now, before we get into the actual review, let's just go over some basic info about the film before we get into it. Now, in the early 80s, after For Your Eyes Only, which was meant to be Roger Moore's last Bond film, and he left. And as a result, filmmakers were looking for someone to possibly be recasted in the role. And I believe they got Josh Brolin as a possible replacement, and he was slated to be the next Bond. However, what ended up happening was Kevin McClory, who of course we all know owns the rights to Thunderball, the whole Spectre organization, and Blofeld, was in production to do a remake of his own Bond film, Never Say Never Again, and he got Sean Connery to star in the role. Now, because of that, and realizing it was going to come out the same year as Octopussy, and realizing it would be a box office battle, the filmmakers asked Roger Moore to come back, and he did. They realized, the filmmakers, they needed to make Octopussy bigger and about a Bond film enough to outperform and outdo Never Say Never Again. And yeah, so that's basically how Roger Moore came back for this film, because of those circumstances. But the question is, how did this film do? Did it end up beating Never Say Never Again? Well, before we do that, let's get into the cast. Now, the cast for this film, pretty much, we have Roger Moore back in his 6th installment as James Bond, and here, for the first time ever in the series, Maud Adams, famous for portraying one of the villainous Bond girls in Man with the Golden Gun, returning to a Bond film to play another Bond character. I think maybe the only actress to ever do so. Maybe, don't fully quote me on that. Where she plays the main Bond girl of the film, Octopussy. We have Louise Judan as the main villain, Kamal Khan as an exiled Afghani prince. We also have Christina Maybourne as Magda, one of his most trusted subordinates, and essentially the Octopussy's henchwoman, and also henchwoman to Kamal Khan. We also have Gobinda, portrayed by Gaba Bendi, basically Kamal Khan's bodyguard. We also have the Soviet general, General Orlov, portrayed by Steven Bergov, and is basically a mad renegade Russian general. We also have David and Anthony Meyer as basically the knife-throwing twins, 2 henchmen in service with Kamal Khan. We also have, let's see, what's his, we have Vijay, portrayed by Vijay Amitraji, basically an MI6 ally in India. And in real life, the guy was an actual tennis player, and there were some tennis jokes because of that fact. Rounding up the rest of the cast, we finally have a new M, portrayed by Robert Brown, who had a minor role in The Spy Who Loved Me. Lois Maxwell is back as Miss Moneypenny. We have Desmond Llewellyn as Q. We also have Sir Frederick here, let's double check. I believe the name is still Sir Frederick Gray. Sorry, I'm having a very bad day. I don't feel quite well with this video, when this recording comes out. So if that's the case, just understand that. We have Sir Frederick back. We have General Goebel, portrayed by Walter Gotel, a KGB leader. Yeah, I'll just remember. Frederick Gray, portrayed by Geoffrey Keane, the British Minister of Defence. He's back. We also have sorry, just also has Stradino, portrayed by Alberto Moses, basically the head of the MI6 station in India, and we have a very interesting Miss Penelope Smallbone, basically portrayed by Michelle Cleville. Hopefully those names are being pronounced right as we go through. And basically she is Moneypenny's assistant. And because we have another 00 agent in this film, 009, portrayed by Anthony Bradford, who was essentially an undercover, and his character essentially drives the story. Anyway, with the casting out of the way, let's get into the actual plot, the whole film plot. We begin our film with the traditional gun barrel opening, and as a result of that, we then lead into a Bond essentially on a mini mission in what is essentially Cuba, where he's essentially trying to, blow up some missiles, essentially. And it's just a fun, over-the-top scene. It's action-packed. Majority of the stunts that were used in this were actually meant to be used in Moonraker. There's this scene where Bond's trying to fly a plane to outrun a missile. There's a funny... And, of course, he uses that missile to blow up the hangar where his objective was to blow up installed. There's some disguises involved. I like the scene where his plane is hid in a horse's ass. I'm not joking. That was true. Happening. And essentially it just ends on a fantastic just a nice little over the top joke with Roger Moore. It's just a fun start to the film and really got you pumped for the adventure ahead. However, I will admit, when the song came, it's honestly not my favorite. All-time high, it was sung by Ritia College. Hopefully those names are being pronounced right. I'm not very great with names, but it's kind of bland. It's not terrible as Moonraker, but for me it's kind of bland. But it was definitely, when you compare the film that it was up against, Never Say Never Again, the song is definitely a bit better, but ultimately one of my least favorites of the film. We then cut into to a circus where a clown is being chased by the two knife-throwing twins, and of course, I like the mystery of why he's running, why is he scared, and of course the knife-throwing twins do catch up with him and throw a knife essentially into his back. He then falls into the water, but manages to make his way to the British Embassy. So essentially essentially this circus is being taken place on a certain soil where it's not in Britain. He manages to make his way to the embassy and meets essentially a very high up official, or at least royalty within the embassy. And when he smashes through the glass doors, those fancy glass doors, the clown sadly dies and out rolls his hand a Fabergé egg. So already we got a bit of mystery of what's going on. What's this? Why was it risking to take this, to make sure this egg doesn't fall into the wrong hands? And essentially we're open to a bit of mystery to the film, which I like. We then cut back to we're in London in MI6, where we get to see for me, one of the best Roger Moore Moneypenny scenes of his tenure. Not only is he in the office with Miss Moneypenny, but they also have Miss Smallbone, and I like how they comment that Miss Moneypenny is getting old a bit, and essentially the idea was to bring in a replacement of Miss Smallbone to essentially for a new younger Bond after this. I'm really upset that nothing really happened with the Smallbone character and nothing happened of it, but I like how this really helped spice up the scene a bit and really just made it far more interesting to watch again. After that, Bond then of course makes his way into M's office where he meets M. M was absent from the previous film due to Bernard Lee tragically passed away, and out of respect decided not to rehire him so quick, so they brought in, the chief of staff character, which was essentially Bill Tanner, who was huge in the books, but was rarely seen in the films during the classic Bond era. Finally, they've recasted M and brought in Robert Brown, who had a small role in The Spy Who Loved Me. Real and honestly, I feel that Robert's casting as M is alright. He has nothing compared to Bernard Lee, but I feel that he tries to do something almost different. But for me, it doesn't work as well. Anyway, Bond is then caught up to what essentially has happened. A Fabergé egg that he managed to deduce like what it is and basically its background. But M points out that the Fabergé egg, although he congratulates Bond on top marks for the explanation, but he also says that it's a fake. A real one will be on auction, and essentially he is to take over 009's mission, as he was found dead with that egg in his hand. There's not much to go on, but apparently someone was willing to kill 009 and did to cover up the fact that these eggs were fake. Realizing that's the case, the only lead, in Bond's word, is the property of a lady, which is a nice little reference to the short story of the same name, and honestly a title I'd like to be used for a Bond film in years to come. Also like what's coming up in this scene where we are in Russia with General Goebel and many Russian officials who are essentially trying to negotiate on nuclear disarmament for everyone. And everyone's on board with this. Again, the filmmakers knew that the Cold War would be coming into its end soon, when the films probably were done, and they didn't want them to look dated with the Cold War theme. So what they decided to do was essentially to have the Russians be not full bad guys, but in this scene, even though most of them, including General Goebel, want to disarm them, there is one Russian who doesn't. The very over-paranoid General Orlov, and already he is a scene stealer for me. He is completely deranged, paranoid, and thirsts for essentially conquest and military supremacy. He essentially is a rogue element, and everyone does not want to be a part of this, because they know a fact that doing this could easily start another war with more nuclear weapons being fired at each other. Goebel is, surprisingly, in fumes, is shown to be essentially a kind of another M, but here we get to see that he is a person who is not full bad. And I just like the scene as it's building up the plot. It's also shown that General Orlov is in cahoots with the knife-throwing twins that were responsible for 009's death after he's called away to a meeting, and turns out that they have been forging authentic Russian jewelry and replacing the real ones with the fake ones and keeping the real ones. But now that the fake Fabergé egg is out in the open, they need to get this real one quickly before it's too late. And as a result, he sends one of his contacts, Kamal Khan, to buy the egg. And Roger Moore's Bond is also there, looking at the egg on auction and seeing many people try to get it. He sees Kamal Khan, his henchman, and a henchwoman there, and essentially sees how they are bidding for the egg. But he's curious as to why he's there. And of course, Roger Moore does do some underhanded tricks, such as he attempts to buy the egg, and when everyone's not looking, he switches the real one for the fake one. And as this is happening, Kamal Khan does win the egg at a high price, and of course immediately leaves with his prize. Back at M's office, M is furious at Bond for bidding for the egg, seeing how he had no reason to, and he would have asked what would he have done if he got it. He would have easily explained that it was a fake. He would say it was a fake and not pay. M's confused, and Bond reveals that he switched the eggs, and realizing that Kamal Khan usually sells this type of stuff. He doesn't buy them, so something's up. And because of this, he believes his instincts that Kamal Khan is in on this, and M backs him up. Again, this kind of shows he has a little bit of stuff borrowed from the Bernard Lee's M. Bernard Lee may taunt Bond. Bernard Lee's M may taunt Bond or berate him sometimes, but he always valued his, skills a lot, as he's his most valuable and even best agent. So it's easy why he would. He then tells Bond to quickly get on a plane to India and quickly get after him. Bond makes his way there along with the Fabergé egg, and I like the scene how when M tells Bond to quickly get on a plane, he immediately takes out a plane ticket, already knowing what he was going to say. as we get now, then, to be honest, the majority of the film takes place in India, which was a location that at this point the film series had never fully taken advantage of. And honestly, it is a beautifully stunning place. I really like it so much. He meets his contact, Vajay, and there's a little nice fourth wall breaking joke with him playing the flute that does the Bond theme. It's all real fun. It's all real fun. And eventually they go to essentially the hotel room where Bond gets booked in. Nice little scene. And then goes to this casino, if you call it that, where Kamal Khan is essentially playing a game with this general, where Bond also meets the head of the station in India. There's this nice little scene where Bond does have a little bit, does the classic, how Bond has to interact with the main villain. He plays a game with him and essentially reveals what he plans to bet the Fabergé egg, though he does know that Khan is cheating due to rigged dice. I can't help it, this is a kind of throwback to Goldfinger, when Goldfinger was sort of cheating at his games. Kamal Khan, now, realizing he has to win the game, Bond takes Kamal Khan's dice and uses them to win, and I like how he doesn't even look down at the dice. He knows that it's rolled up at double sixes, and he's won. Kamal Khan then gives Bond a check, but he prefers to have it cash, so he cashes all the money out. And there's this nice little, subtle threatening scene with, scene between Bond and Kamal Khan, which is really fun, and Roger Moore is absolutely just a delight to see. I also like how, his henchman, Govinda, grabs the dice and uses his hands to crush him. And just, puts the dice on the ground and they walk away. I just like the scene how not only Bond is getting to really get to, interact with the villain and the henchman, but also the henchwoman who's also there. And I really like how this film is just, it's what you expect from a Bond film, mindless entertainment so far. But again, because Bond has made an enemy of the bad guy wants to get revenge on Bond. So there's this chase scene throughout the streets of India in these weird taxis, and Bond and Rajesh are trying to, fight off Govinda and the goons. And there are some over-the-top jokes. There's some tennis jokes thrown in during this scene. There's some Indian stereotypes, with the laying on the nail beds, the sword swallowing. And I like how the scene just ends with eventually the two managing to escape, and how it's funny how essentially what happens is they drive through a movie poster and then another movie poster drops on covering it up, and of course Bond ends with a quip, and it turns out what's happened is they've actually gone to India's Q gadget shop where Q is here, and we get some fun little nice gags. But Q gives Bond his new gadget, a special pen that shoots out acid, and can also be used as a listening device. They then bug the Fabergé egg with a bugging device, which he then uses on his watch to track. But we also foreshadow something's going to happen in the film with a new watch, which essentially is a camera. And of course, there is some nice little innuendos and just little childish antics by Bond. And it's just fun. Honestly, Roger Moore is probably the funnest of the Bonds, I will admit. After this scene, Bond goes back to his hotel where he has dinner with the henchwoman, Magda. And essentially it's a nice scene. There's the scene where we see the tattoo on her and she reveals it's her Octopussy, and I just like the eye rolls Roger Moore gives her. And basically it's and of course he does better. Okay, well it's just there now. And of course she escapes with this going over the balcony, and her dress slowly becoming more of a rope, and it's just a nice little scene. And just as that's happening, Bond essentially gets hit on the head by Govinda and is taken to Kamal Khan's palace. Now this is where we get something interesting in the film. While Bond is locked up there, Kamal Khan gets his hands on the eggs and go and meets this mysterious woman named Octopussy. She's shrouded in mystery, and essentially, as soon as Kamal Khan reveals the guy he got locked up as Bond, she immediately wants him to bring Bond to her. Kamal Khan then goes back to his palace, and we get the Bond dinner scene with the villain, and the stuff they eat there kind of reminds me of what to expect from Indiana Jones' Temple of Doom. I don't know if either Temple of Doom was inspired by this, or if Bond was inspired by Temple of Doom. It's really hard to tell. Following that, Bond sends him to his room, and he does some investigating work. He breaks out of his room and does some investigating all over the palace, where he essentially sees General Orlov landing there, and uses a listening device to find out that, about the jewels, but there's something bigger going on. And Kamal Khan is part of a far bigger plot. And Bond quickly has to find his way out. Orlov destroys the the egg that turns out, I think, is a fake. And I like the scene just Kamal Khan makes, like when it's broken, like he doesn't like it to seem being broken. Bond makes his escape, but it also causes basically all of Kamal Khan's minions to start chasing him in the forest. There are elephants after Bond. Bond is dodging snakes. He's dodging tigers. There's this really goofy scene of this Tarzan thing, and I like how he has no gadget to really save him. He has no gun, and he's barely making it. Of course, he does eventually escape Kamal Khan and his men by making his way to a tourist boat, and they take him to safety. And of course, Roger Moore does get a one-liner off. He makes his way back to Hugh's workshop, and it's revealed that the tattoo is a sign of Octopussy, who lives on this island guarded purely by women. No men are allowed on it, with some exception. Bond then makes his way there in a fake crocodile, because the water surrounding the Octopussy's place is said to be infested by crocodiles. As he makes his way there, he searches through the place, and where he meets Octopussy. It turns out Octopussy and Bond have a bit of a run-in. Well, not exactly. It turns out Bond actually knows Octopussy's father. In fact, he was a government traitor, and Bond was sent to get him. But Bond essentially didn't kill him, but allowed him to get his affairs in order before he did. But what ended up happening was Octopussy's dad ended up committing suicide by killing himself. Octopussy is grateful for that, because he allowed him to essentially die with some dignity, and he's grateful for him for that, which is a nice little relationship, and I like how it's just done there. And what ends up happening, Octopussy allows Bond to stay at her place, and as that happens, Kamal Khan comes in saying that Bond's escaped, but he is shocked to find him there. But of course, Octopussy says that Bond will be staying with her from now on. Kamal Khan then leaves. Automatically, I must admit, out of all the Bond girls from Roger Moore's tenure, I always liked Octopussy with Roger Moore's Bond, for two reasons. One, she's a very interesting character, and throughout the film, you'll find that she takes no crap from anyone, and she's a very strong and confident, independent woman. Second, I feel she is incredibly age-appropriate for Roger Moore. As you see, the later Roger Moore films, Roger's is getting too old now, and the idea Bond's supposed to be in his youth. So the idea of this, they're age-appropriate, and despite the fact Maud Adams is a bit old, she is not just incredibly age-appropriate for Roger, but she still looks incredibly beautiful for her age. But anyway, back to the film. Kamal Khan is not going to take this lying down, so he hires assassins to essentially break into Octopussy's place and essentially kill Bond, but he requests that they leave her unharmed. And I like this yo-yo buzzsaw device. It's really cool. And of course, as we see that, we also find that Q and Rajesh have been secretly guarding outside the palace and have been taking turns to watch guard. But the last one to take turn was Rajesh, who ends up getting killed by Govinda and two of the goons. The henchmen make their way to Octopussy's island, and essentially there's a big fight with not just Bond getting in on it, but also Octopussy too, who shows that she is a person who's not going to take crap from anyone. Eventually, this leads to Bond and a henchman getting knocked out a window, where a crocodile comes in and it seemingly kills both him and the henchman. And you can see Octopus is a little bit upset. Again, it's clearly hinted that whilst Bond's time on the island, the two developed attraction to one another. And I also liked how she tried to convince Bond to join her side. And it kind of reminds you of the Batman and Catwoman relationship type thing. Eventually, it turns out the crocodile that supposedly ate Bond was the fake one, and the real guy just got killed by Bond. He makes his way to Rajesh, where he finds Q. Turns out he's dead, and Q immediately finds out it's Kamal's men. During Bond's time on the island and doing some investigative work, as we saw throughout the sequence, we're there to find out that Octopussy runs a circus, and essentially they have to get to this place in Kamal's cut. Bond is then with M updating the events, realizing that Kamal Khan and General Orlov are in on a caper, but M's not convinced that it's just to steal jewelry, something bigger is afoot, and we know that too. We also know General Orlov's paranoia and whole military thing might play a role in this. And Bond agrees too. He then makes his way to the circus, and we get to see this nice scene with Octopussy, Magda, and essentially all the circus performers. Eventually, Bond makes his way to a train where he encounters one of the knife-throwing twins and ends up killing, and essentially is in disguise as a gorilla. But before that scene took place, we see General Orlov and Kamal Khan, doing with these diamond and jewelry with Octopussy, essentially tricking her in that this is just another jewelry operation. But it turns out it's something far bigger. What they're actually doing is they're rigging the cannon with a bomb that essentially will go off. Now we don't know what's this got to do quite yet. Of course, we then get back to the scene where Bond takes down the knife-throwing twin, and just as they're taking the jewelry away, Bond has holds General Orlov at gunpoint, and he knows about the bomb, but he's still not quite convinced, and he can't believe that he's willing to have the bomb explode on a U.S. military base. And when they find out the Russians did it, how do you think the U.S. will retaliate? But Orlov says, against whom? Bond then realizes that the Americans will immediately assume that it was just a nuclear bomb that went off accidentally, and this would call for total U.S. disarmament. But this would just be bad, as this will allow the paranoid Orlov to use his military force to walk over the border at will, and essentially cause countless deaths. And I like how Bond just gets disgusted about all those innocents that could get killed and the accident of his. But Orlov doesn't see that as murder. He sees it that the military has a far better strength and they should use it. And I like how he's the only Russian who wants to do this. The rest don't, which shows that not all Russians were evil. A fight breaks out between Bond and Orlov's men, which results in a chase, with Bond managing to make his way onto the train that both has the bomb and Octopussy, Kamal Khan, and basically all the crew making their way. Bond manages to get there, make his way on the train, but what happens is Orlov's jewelry smuggling operation is discovered courtesy of the car Bond was using, which ended up in the river and got to the Russian authorities with General Orlov there. General Gobel there, inspecting it, realizing that it was Orlov's car, and realizing they needed to find him. Just as the train leaves the border and Bond essentially on the train, Orlov tries to catch up to it, but is gunned down by his own crew because he had not shown the papers, and his death is pretty fun, I will admit. It's a fun death with how his paranoia and overall maniacalness got the better of him and resulted in his death. It's a nice scene. But we're still not over yet. Bond is now on the train and eventually gets into a fight with Kamal Khan, his henchman, and the other twin of the knife-throwing twins, who is mad at Bond at revenge for killing his brother. Eventually, and I like the train fight with them being on top. It's really nice stunt work here. It's really fun. Eventually, the knife-throwing twin and Bond get launched off and end up running in the forest. A nice little callback to how 009 was running from the knife-throwing twins. Eventually, Bond is cornered, and the other knife-throwing twin is about to go in for the kill for revenge for his brother. But Bond managed to dodge at the last minute and throws the knife, killing the other half of the knife-throwing twins, and shouts, "That's for 009, which I think shows just how loyal the 00s are to each other. I really like that scene. It's absolutely great. But Bond still needs to find his way to the circus with the bomb counting down. After going by car, he eventually makes his way onto the base, but is chased by base security because they believe he's because of the police that were chasing Bond for stealing the car. He eventually dresses up in a clown costume. Yes, you heard me right. Makes his way into the circus and manages to convince the military there about the bomb in the cannon, and even convince Octopussy about the whole thing, about how they're not smuggling jewelry, they're using it to blow it up, and it's nearly close. Most don't believe him, so he decides to go and disarm it himself, resulting in a big fight in the circus with security and basically all the circus performers, which is really fun. I like how also Octopussy slightly helps as he shoots off the lock, revealing the bomb. Eventually Bond's let go and he disarms it just in the nick of time. And it ends with a little joke when the guy that gets launched out of the cannon comes out and says, "Now?" It's a little funny moment, it's just really fun, and it just ends with Bond succeeding, preventing essentially a mad tyrant's crazy ploy to essentially wipe out innocent people. But they're not over yet, with Kamal Khan realizing that, Octopussy knows that she's sold him out, and his plan and all this. Kamal Khan and his goon realize they need to get all the luxury, all their, everything they need, and quickly make their escape immediately. And just as this is happening, there is a big fight in Kamal Khan's palace between Kamal Khan's goons and Octopussy's female crew, which is really fun. And Magda is, of course, on Octopussy's side and is fine with the rest of the crew. This is just really fun stuff. Q gets a bit in on the action as well, and so does Bond. Octopussy does too, proving she's a capable fighter, and of course a capable fighter, but she ends up getting captured by Kamal Khan and his goon, and they essentially end up kidnapping her and taking her away. I like how Q helps out at the end and essentially saves Octopussy's crew from getting killed, and I like the scene how they essentially try to, I'd say make their way with him, and he says, "No, we don't have time for that." Later, perhaps. It's just a funny moment for me. Bond eventually makes his way chasing Kamal Khan by horse, and eventually jumps on the plane on the outside as it makes its way up in the air. It's a really fun scene, and I like how it's done for real. Most of these stunts back in the Bond glory days were done for real. They weren't fake or CGI, they were done for real. It's really great. Bond manages to make his way into the plane. He ends up throwing Govinda, who was on the plane, off it to his death. But you could see him having a parachute, so again, it was probably stuntman. It was never the real actors in question. He manages to save Octopussy, and quickly, as the plane is going down because of Bond meddling with it, her and Octopussy manage to quickly get off just before the plane crashes, killing Kamal Khan. And it's clear that Bond has injured pretty much majority of the bones in his body. We then come back to M's office, where he's with the Minister of Defense and General Goebel, who would like to have all the jewelry that be returned to them, and will deny that the events have ever occurred, and essentially reveal the whole thing. Obviously, not all the Russians were in on this. It was just this one tyrant man who, is clearly deranged. And of course, they ask where Bond is, and he says, "Oh, he's coming his way back, but due to his condition, he's not fit to travel." We then see the Octopussy boat with, that we've seen throughout the film, with Octopussy and Bond in the special room. Bond then suddenly, miraculously heals from his condition, and it's just a fun little scene. Shows that Roger Moore is still dirty as ever, and it's a great scene, and we end the film there. Octopussy had the audacious task in 1983 to battle Never Say Never Again, and essentially, and was meant to be bigger and badder than ever. Now, when you compare the films, it definitely succeeded in being a better Bond film, hands down, to Never Say Never Again. But it is kind of average. But however, it does have a lot of standout moments for me. For me, if this was the last film for Roger Moore to do, this would have been a good film for him to go out on, as it would have summed up his whole Roger Moore tenure. Maud Adams as Octopussy is a memorable and fantastic Bond girl. Kamal Khan is a bit of a slimy bastard, which I like. And General Orlov here is completely paranoid and screen stealing. He's absolutely fantastic. Now, there is an argument to who is really the true Bond villain of the piece, as it's clear that Kamal Khan was meant to be billed as the main one, but to be honest, the real plan was really run by Orlov. I like to consider both the main villain, but I like to also think Kamal Khan just is a far better character. Other than that, the majority of the film is kind of average. Goebel, the henchman, is pretty much an odd job clone, although unlike odd job, this guy actually speaks. I like the Indian setting, it makes it stand out. Some of the supporting characters either range from average to okay. The Knife Throwing Twins I found to be pretty cool. And the fact that I like how when Bond kills one of the Knife Throwing Twins and Avengers 009 and it says that line, just shows how much of a connection it is. Overall, this film is really great, is really okay. It's not at the bottom of the barrel of some of the worst films in the series, nor is it at the top of some of the most outstanding and groundbreaking that the series had to offer. For me, it's in the between. It's one of those films that exists in between. And honestly, that's how I kind of think it should be viewed as, just an average, fun, entertaining film. Of course, at the time when the films came out, this film won in the battle of the box office and proved that you didn't need just to have Sean Connery to make a Bond film. You needed to have all the elements come together, and I feel they succeeded. And yeah, so with that, they agreed to have Roger Moore come back for one more Bond film. So there we have it. That was Octopussy, a really fun, okay Bond film, a bit definitely average, but still a fun and entertaining one, and I consider it one of Roger Moore's best films. After the release of that film in 1983, which proved to be far better in the box office battles, honestly, this film was great. I won the box office battle. Roger Moore wasn't quite done that yet. Instead, he would come back for 1985's A View to a Kill. So stick around for that review. Until then, this has been the Steven Hour, and tune in and wait until next time we'll review the next 007 movie review. So until then, tune in for next time.